G'day, welcome to Wetlands Woodworking. Today we're going to build this round display table. Starting with this slab of Blackbutt, we're marking out the rough width of the table. Using a track saw, we cut the table to the rough width. Because the slab is too wide to fit through my thicknesser, I'm cutting the slab down the middle, and we'll need to rejoin this in a later step. With the slab now cut in half, it's time to address that bark on the live edge, and I'm using a wire buff tool in my angle grinder to do this. Prepping to put the boards back to back through the thicknesser, using some playing cards to take out any uneven wobble in the board, and some hot glue to hold them down. The board's now nice and flat on one side. It's time to remove them from the sled to put them back through the thicknesser again to flatten the other side. Nice and flat. Running both boards through the jointer to get a nice edge for the glue up. Roughly marking out some areas where I'll be using the domino to join the boards back together. With the domino mortises now cut, it's time to rejoin these boards back together. Important to note, the dominoes don't add any strength to the joint. They are simply used for alignment. The real strength is in the glue up itself. Important to clean up any glue squeeze out. It makes it so much easier for final sanding and finishing later on. Allowing a few hours for the glue to dry, it's time to remove this board from the clamps and to start preparing the board to repair any cracks or knots with epoxy. Running the board through the table saw to give it some nice flat edges that we can put some melamine backers on to stop epoxy from running everywhere when we pour it into the wood. Placing the melamine backer over the knot hole that we want to fill with epoxy. Sealing up those edges so we don't have epoxy running all over the table. You don't need to ask how I learnt this one. That's a bit rude. Mixing the epoxy itself is important to make sure you follow the instructions, getting the right quantity between part A and part B. Adding a metallic black pearl pigment dye to the epoxy. And finally filling in all those cracks, crevices and knot holes. Using a small syringe to take care of the smaller holes to avoid the mess. Using a blowtorch to remove any air bubbles. While we wait for the epoxy to dry, it's back to the jointer and then the thicknesser to prepare the material for the legs. Running the material through the table saw, cutting the 4 legs to their final dimensions. Also at the table saw, cutting the pieces that will form the cross braces to support the underside of the table and the lower portion of the 4 legs. With the epoxy now dry, it's time to cut the circle out of the tabletop. I did this using a jig that I made from an MDF board. It has several holes drilled along the axis to give different diameter cuts. My 8-year-old son deciding to help me in the shop today, excited to use the vacuum cleaner for dust extraction. He did a great job. A great job of being distracted. Photobombing the great demonstration of perfect sanding technique. Cutting the legs to their final length. Back at the table saw now, working on the cross braces. We're going to be using a half lap joint for this, using some setup blocks to ensure the correct amount of material is removed. Some final epoxy fill work to do on the legs. Final sanding on the cross braces, legs and tabletop. Starting assembly of the cross braces. These are held together with nothing more but glue and the half lap joint that we cut earlier. This is a very strong joint. Using a tung oil, we apply the first coat of finish to the tabletop. While that finish is soaking in, it's back to the cross braces to mark out the joinery for the legs. Cutting the legs to their final dimensions. Forgetting to press record on my camera, here is part of the legs already assembled, glued and dried. Using a router to put the final trim on the edges of all the legs and the cross braces. This time, remembering to press record on my camera, we glue the final legs into their position and clamp them to dry. Again, cleaning up any glue squeeze out to ease the finishing process. Final hand sanding prior to finishing. Tung oil is also used on the legs assembly. Once the oil has soaked in, we remove any excess with a shop towel. Drilling a recess into the top of each cross brace, we'll install a figure 8 washer to attach the leg assembly to the tabletop. Drilling the corresponding holes in the tabletop. These figure 8 washers will allow for some seasonal movement of the wood. And there we have it, our completed round display table. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like and subscribe below.